Person Terry Birchfield is unavailable this evening, and thus I will be chairing the meeting. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over Lunenburg Public Access Channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. The following information is also provided for members of the public that wish to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please log in to the Zoom app, meeting 88615-259-136, or from a telephone, dial a toll-free number, 888-475-4499, and enter the webinar ID 88615-259-136#. You shouldn't need to register for Zoom. You will be asked for your name and an email address, but no participant ID is needed. If you do wish to speak, just dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. And computer users and app users may use the raised hand feature to request to speak. This agenda lists all the topics. We'll follow the agenda. Okay. This meeting is, first of all, welcome everybody. This is our first live in-person Finance Committee meeting in 15 months. So very excited to do this. Thank you all for joining us. Mr. Tom Gray is here, recently appointed to the Finance Committee, who will be seated in a couple of weeks. Welcome. Thank you for volunteering. And we have members of the school department administration here as well, who are on the agenda to discuss some school department related issues. Also participating remotely is Heather Lemieux, our town manager. She is actually controlling the Zoom remotely tonight, which is kind of cool and should be interesting. And she will chime in as needed to help us with public comment as well as other items. Does anybody have any announcements? Hearing none. Is there any public comment? Heather, is there anybody on the Zoom indicating an interest in public comment?
There is not.
Okay. Next on the agenda, item 3, discussion with school representatives regarding ratified collective bargaining agreements. We have the superintendent of schools, Dr. Burnham, and Mr. Cassidy, the finance director and personnel director. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Can either or both of you come to the microphone so that our friends at home can hear you?
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's ironic that we were here at your last live meeting and here again at your first
live meeting. A little surreal.
Meeting.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to come here in person tonight after last week's unfortunate cancellation. I appreciate you coming. I'm the one that took the initiative to invite you to last week's meeting, so I appreciate you coming this week. I think the members of the board are aware the school department has, over the last 3 weeks, ratified 3 new collective bargaining contracts. I believe there's one more to work through. And I invited Dr. Burnham and Mr. Cassidy here to just give us an update on those contracts. Employee compensation was an issue that we took up and took a pretty serious look at in the winter months. And so I thought it was apropos, considering that there were certainly unanswered or open issues with respect to these contracts, that perhaps we could have a more substantive conversation about tonight now that those contracts have been agreed upon and ratified. And I did share some questions and comments in advance with the town manager, the superintendent, and Mr. Cassidy, and I believe Mrs. Soroka did as well. And so I will give you the floor, and we can go from there.
All righty.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Cassidy. I'm the business manager for the Lunenburg Public Schools. It's great to be here. And it's good to talk about some of the hard work that we've been doing during the springtime. And when I say hard work, I mean administration and our negotiating team. So as Mr. Beardmore indicated, we have settled a number of contracts with our bargaining groups. So we've settled with our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our cafeteria workers, and then in addition, we modified and updated our salary schedule for our unaffiliated employees. So those are, that's kind of a group that falls outside of a lot of the collective bargaining agreements, a lot of our lower paid positions. So why don't we start with the teachers? So at the beginning of at June, we had presented, I think it was the 3rd, we had presented an agreement to the school committee, which was approved by the school committee. We had been bargaining with the Lunenburg Education Association since January. We got off to a late start, but it was an intensive bargaining process over the following months leading up to the ultimate resolution in May. There were a number of housekeeping issues and clarifications on the contract and some new language that was proposed that really didn't have a lot of impact on the budget. However, there were a number of items that did. So why don't we start with the COLA amounts that were agreed with the Lunenburg Education Association. So we settled for a cost of living increase for FY22 of 2.5%, in FY23 1.5%, and in FY24 1%.
So that's for teachers, athletic, and stipend. The bullet is a little ambiguous.
That includes, yes, the salary schedule, and in addition, coaches and advisors. So the last 2 years, FY23 and FY24, we do have a lower COLA for those years. What we did is, within the contract, we're disbanding 2 senior teacher programs, a master teacher program, and it's called the Service Recognition Program. That program, it has an obligation in the contract of about $120,000. We are phasing that out and rolling those expenses, that obligation, into the salary schedule, creating an additional step for our senior teachers. In addition, we are offering educators who have at least 20 years of service in Lunenburg and at least 100 days, a one-time payment up to $2,500 at the time of retirement if they give proper notification to the superintendent. And basically, it's about a year before they retire. There's advantages to that for administration, for maybe reorganizing a department, some curriculum. It opens up a lot of opportunities for us, and it's a very modest expense for an outgoing teacher. So those are the highlights as far as the money goes. So let's talk about the overall impact of the budget over the next 3 years is estimated to be $670,772. That's a 3-year estimate over the next 3 years. So that includes the 3 years of the COLA increases, rolling the master teacher into the salary schedule, and in addition, the buyback of the potential buyback of $7,500 per year against the annual budget.
Would you prefer to discuss the LEA contract? There are some questions here and some discussion that I'm sure will ensue. Would you prefer to do that now or go through all of the contracts and changes and then we can roll up and have just a general discussion?
You think? Okay. Okay. You'll see some similarities as we move forward, so maybe, maybe I'll answer a question as we get into some of the other agreements. The next group that we were able to settle with was the Lunenburg Paraprofessional Association. And the overall increase to that contract was a 2% COLA increase in FY22, FY23, and FY24. There were some additional costs that were associated with this contract, and let me go through those. We're adding additional holidays to the bargaining group every single year. I just want to remind, so the teachers, our annualized salary, our paraprofessional group, are hourly employees. So they only get paid when they show up, so to speak. So in addition, we settled on increasing their opportunity for course reimbursement. And the value to that to the district is really just investing in some of our paraprofessionals, hoping that they become teachers. We made adjustments for paraprofessionals that substituted for teachers during the day, and who did long-term subs for teachers during the year. And long-term subbing means subbing for the same teacher over 10 days. We also made a 5-cent adjustment on an per hour on the longevity hourly rate. It had a minimum impact on the budget, but it was something that trying to value our long-term employees. And one thing that we've been after for a while is a stipend for paraprofessionals that are required to be restraint trained and maybe assist students who are medically fragile. So that is a $360 stipend annually that's provided to those paras, and that designation will be established at the beginning of the year. Total cost of the impact over the next 3 years for this contract is approximately $119,110 over that, and that's for the next 3 years. That includes the COLAs, the holidays, the projected stipend costs, the small longevity increase, and really some projected the subbing costs. So those two contracts were settled in the beginning of June. And that led to some momentum to settle the next contract with our cafeteria workers. It was a very simple contract and very simple negotiations with this group. We had settled for a 3% increase for FY21, and that's starting on January 3rd, 2021, so it's a half-year increase at 3%. A 3% starting July 1st, 2021, and then for FY23, a 2% increase. The estimated value of that contract settlement over 3 years is $14,357.
Mr. Cassidy, does that contract expire at the end of FY23?
June 30th, FY23.
Right, so that it expires before the other two contracts expire.
Yes.
Right, okay.
So that was one of our strategies too, is to kind of break up the gang of, and I don't mean it like they were ganging up on it, but it really is trying to break it up so administration can really focus in on specific groups. I know that was one of the goals for the custodians too. There is some value to, for our time, and really focusing in on contracts. And having 4 contracts at once is a lot of moving targets as far as projections. It, it may not make the news easier for me, but it might make my job easier just knowing that I'm going to have less balls in play at once. So thank you for bringing that up. The next group is the unaffiliated group. And once again, these are our employees that work in the extended day program. It's primarily that group. Our coder down at the primary, our CAF monitors, which we don't have any at this time. So they kind of fall into, it's kind of a contract that's administered by the school committee. So for that group, we followed the paraprofessional contract, and it was 2-2-2 for the next 3 years on those positions. The challenging thing, as I explained to the school committee last night, the challenging thing is that it's a little bit higher than the 2-2-2 for some of our lower paid positions, because we're trying to keep up with the minimum wage. So for those positions, it was much higher. It was closer to 4.5% to 5% over, just so we could be competitive for our high school students to work with us after school. So
Are they all above minimum wage or at minimum wage?
they will never fall below minimum wage. So we've set it up that they're not going to fall behind minimum wage, and and it kind of sets us up at. I'm not really sure where it's going to leave in FY24, but at that point it does take a 2% increase. So, so that being said, the projected costs, and once again, this is absolutely a projection, but based upon the numbers that I could see, for 3 years is $16,133. Now, this is probably one that'll fluctuate the most, and I say that it's going to really depend on the enrollment of our extended day program. So the more kids that enroll, the costs may go up, but once again, we're going to be taking in more revenue as we charge more people. I will repeat what I said to the school committee last night publicly. We will, and I'm saying this publicly to parents, we will be looking at what we charge parents on an hourly basis, maybe look at the whole program, and maybe looking at the restructuring, the cost, and what we charge parents based upon some of the increases to the the minimum wage. We're not paying anyone prevailing wage yet at the extended day program. I apologize, but we're once we start the school year and we can take a look at the enrollment, we'll make a recommendation to the school committee. But it's going to affect parents. But our costs have gone up because the minimum wage has gone up.
And the impact to parents is a year out.
Yeah.
We'd be making a recommendation this fall to be in play a year from this fall.
Oh, so they have a year to get ready.
Yes.
And the final piece that we had proposed and was approved by the school committee was we looked at our substitute pays. Now, our subs, it's been a tough year for substitutes nationwide, definitely around the Commonwealth. A lot of districts were struggling to get qualified substitutes to fill teacher and para absences. So we made recommendations. Actually, we took a survey, looked at some surrounding towns, and looked at what they were paying their substitutes, and we were below the average. So to remain competitive, we had proposed increasing day-to-day subs from 70 to 85, and we adjusted our scale for our long-term subs from 85 to $100 a day, and then if you're a long-term sub, over 40 days, from $250 to $260. We're also increasing our paraprofessional substitute rate, which very quickly will be falling behind the minimum wage. So we brought it up to $15 an hour starting in FY '22. It'll remain at $15 in FY '23. And in FY '24, it goes up to a 2% increase at $15.30. Just an operational feedback on this. So teachers are paid by the day, so it's $85 a day. If you substitute for a para, then it's an hourly thing. So we may only need a paraprofessional for a couple hours, and then we pay you for a couple hours. We generally need a teacher for a whole day, and that's why it's a daily rate for a teacher, and we go an hourly for paras. The salaries that I indicated for paraprofessionals will be mirrored for our secretary substitutes, and at this time, we're not making any adjustments to our nursing daily rate of pay. So there's a lot of, and the cost to that was projected, and this is a local budget, is likely to be up to about $17,385 for next year.
Mr. Cassidy,
So
I just have a question. How much do the nurses make as subs daily? The nurse subs?
the nurse substitutes make $130 a day.
So substitutes do not make the equivalent of minimum wage.
No, no, it's the daily rate. It's just a daily rate of pay.
Okay. But that's like 6 or 7 hours, right?
Yes. It's a standard practice of that's how districts pay those substitutes. It's kind of a lump sum pay.
Yeah, it always annoys me that government mandates minimum wage for private industry and exempts themselves from doing the same.
It helps our budget sometimes. The disadvantage is recruiting, right? So not being competitive puts municipalities, school departments definitely at a disadvantage, trying to encourage people to get into either education or public service. So it is troublesome.
Yeah, sure. And to me, it's just a double standard that shouldn't exist.
So we're trying to, for many of our positions, we're trying to honor that. Like I said, we're trying to be competitive. There's a lot of businesses in town that pay above minimum wage for our lower paid jobs. So we want to lure people in. And as I said to the school committee last night, it's a great recruiting tool. Usually we hire from within if you can maintain some sort of service within the district, and you demonstrate the qualities that we're looking for. Certainly, you're in consideration for any long-term openings that we have.
And they also have to pay into mass teachers. They get a fee on theirs.
They don't. So they pay into a retirement system. So it's kind of a I forget the exact. It's some smart plan. The smart plan. It's a smart plan. So anyone who works for a municipality has to contribute into the smart plan, and it's I think it's 9% that comes out. the employee, if they decide they don't want to work for a municipality, can take that money out at some point. It's a pre-tax program. But everyone who works for the school department, anyone who would work for the town, has to pay into a retirement system. It's the law.
What was the average salary of a daily sub that you compared it to other towns in the area? What
It was
the
about
average?
$85.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, because I had heard Leominster was 120. Is that not?
That may be for a retiree or a long-term sub. Yeah.
So you'd brought up some comparatives, Mr. Cassidy. Can you talk about, in particular, with respect to the LEA contract, which I believe is our single biggest line on our town budget, is our teacher salaries. How do we stand up competitively against other districts in terms of our pay?
Okay, so at the onset of the negotiations, this is one area that we began to look at. Where do we fall? And certainly, LEA had an opinion, and then we certainly had an opinion. But really, we did a lot of data digging. We probably did more data digging than LEA, but we ultimately did get down to agreed on to some comparatives. So there were about 8 other districts that we really focused in on. I had we used the DART program for
Comparable size of district and comparable wealth of the community.
Demographics, yeah.
and student enrollment.
Yeah.
So we looked at all of those, but then we narrowed it down to 8. And what we found, so my data was that, so I took like 3 points within the salary schedule for comparison. We were probably right in the middle to above at the beginning, like a first step employee. We were doing okay, right. I would say we were in the middle, but in the top of the middle after about 5 years, like a step 5. So, and then we started losing ground on a step 10. In fact, we were probably close to the bottom. So we started losing momentum as we started getting deeper
On the
into
top steps.
on the top step.
And there are 13 steps now? Right, so 10
There
is
have been
really
12,
close,
yeah.
yeah, to
Yeah.
the top, okay.
So, looking at that data, and it's something that they wanted, but we had some information to kind of back that up. Our teacher contract, as it stands right now, has 12 steps. So after 12 years or whatever, you hit that max step. There's some other benefits like longevity. After 15 years in the district, you start gaining that. But we had determined that they wanted, they felt that senior teachers were falling behind. We had some data that supported that, and that's why we started looking at that master teacher program and try to eliminate that and minimize the liability that would be carrying onto the contract over the next few years. So we were able to phase the master teacher out immediately, and then phase out the service recognition over the life of this contract, 3 years, so that they'll all go away.
So as of July 1st, there will be no more master teachers. That program is done with, and step 13 starts.
We have one master?
We have one teacher, well, originally,
What?
their deadline to submit a proposal is December 15th. We had 3 proposals. 2 of those proposals are truly more stipend related, not a master teacher project. The third one is a new project that was executed this year for the first year. We'd like to be able to execute it as a project again next year, but we'll pay that as a stipend, not as technically the master teacher program. And that project actually is related to oversight of the new civics requirement at the high school. When we see what that looks like through next year, we'll probably be in a better position to determine a stipend and, you know, the specifications for roles and responsibility that go with that stipend. No more master teacher.
And you don't anticipate that there are other projects that would be master teacher projects that would evolve into stipended positions, or is it too early to tell?
No, I think, you know, there might be an occasion in the future that a project-based short-term need might exist for the district. And we might be able to solicit some input and see if anybody's interested in taking on a project. And again, it would be a temporary stipend, not a stipend that goes into the contract.
Right, yeah.
Very short-term, you know, responsibility to execute with a stipend.
I'd like to kind of open the discussion a little bit around these steps, and I'm sure you saw the email that I sent earlier today. As a committee, we've had discussions over the last couple of years that I've been here about all of our salary plans, and I can't say there's a consensus, but there's a prevailing opinion that in some cases we have too many steps. We're hiring in at too low a rate and incentivizing people to stay probably longer than they ought to. And if you believe that, then the logical conclusion is figure out how to compress and elevate the bottom and maintain the top, probably, because it's hard to reduce the top. And so when I saw the summary, it struck me as kind of the opposite of that, right? The only step that got a raise in FY21 was step 12, and now we're applying a COLA to every step plus adding a 13. And in my mind, that seemed counterintuitive to what we had talked about. Now, the evidence that's been presented tonight is counterintuitive to what I believed, so I appreciate that information. But could you perhaps offer some color in terms of the thinking there? Like, are you confident that we're hiring at the right rate, that we can be that we are an attractive place for the best of the best young, talented teachers to come to Lunenburg? That, as a parent, that's my concern. I'm a lot less concerned about, somebody who's been around a long time who has fewer options outside of Lunenburg.
First thing is, I would say everywhere, teachers, once they're in a district for that many years, the likelihood that they're moving on to a different district, they're not. I would say that in terms of recruitment, I can tell you personally, in my early days as a teacher, you look at the salary schedule and you look to see where you will ultimately end up. And you might be willing to take a little lesser year one because over time, essentially you're going to end up in a better spot. So I do think that we are hiring in at the right spot. The comparisons indicated that. And I think, we might have been losing folks if our top step was not also equally competitive to other districts. So now that we've made that adjustment, I think we're in a very good spot. And as far as hiring in the best of the best, I can tell you that it's fairly standard practice across the industry that, positions are budgeted for less. So we see a retirement, we're going to budget for less. I can tell you that it's been my experience in other districts that principals might be told, sorry that you found a great candidate, but they'll have to accept master's step 3. Well, if you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 years of experience, you're not going to accept a job that you're being paid the equivalent of 3 years experience. Since I've come into the district, we hire the best candidate, regardless of where they fall on the salary schedule. And we've hired some really outstanding people in the last handful of years. So I do think that we are competitive.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Dr. Burnham took the words right out of my mouth, and we hire the best candidates. I want to reiterate that. And no one, so I send out the offers to all the employees, all the new employees. No one has ever told me, you can't offer more than this step. So we honor the service.
Yep.
We hire the best professionals for our classrooms,
Okay.
period.
I know there's some more questions about the contracts, and I'll get to those in a second. I do want to tell everybody, I also want to briefly touch on the ESSER 2 to 3 funding, but I'll entertain more questions.
I just want to, I'm
Please.
curious how many people have left the district because they're not making enough money once they're in. You know, we're talking about keeping people, but I'm just curious how many have actually left because they don't feel they're being paid fairly.
I can say that
Is there a
we
turnover
do
rate?
not do an exit interview on everyone that
But do we have
leaves.
a lot of
But-
turnover?
We do
in the-
not.
Okay.
Right. For our teachers, no.
Right, and most folks indicate when they offer their resignation, the reason that they might be taking a position elsewhere. Oftentimes, it's for career advancement.
Right, not a lateral,
Correct.
yes.
If they do take a lateral, so a teaching position to another teaching position, oftentimes it's commute-related. You know, they're closer to home, which can have an impact on your family life balance with your work, so. But we have not been alerted to any resignations within the district in the teaching ranks or in our professional service provider ranks relative to low salary.
Okay.
I do think that we have had trouble in recent years recruiting. We have had some excellent candidates for paraprofessional positions, but once they see the salary, the hourly rate, they say no. And we've lost some people who have had good skills, already been trained elsewhere, and lost them because we were not.
And I got to tell you, as the parent of a kid who benefited, they're super important positions.
They are super important, no doubt, no doubt. They absolutely are.
Can I just talk about the paraprofessional contract? I wasn't hiding this information. I just recalled when Dr. Burnham was speaking. We did take a look at that salary schedule a little bit differently. So you talk about the steps, right? Well, they've got 3 columns, and so they've got steps for the years of service, and you got columns with the high school. It's some college associates or bachelors, and then a licensed bachelor. Our high school column was getting really out of whack with the minimum wage. We're having a very difficult time recruiting and hiring people in that column. So this was an opportunity when we negotiated. We kind of reshifted that around to kind of, the lowest step is still above the minimum wage, where it was like penny this year's.
You've removed some steps, right? Is that part of the paraprofessional?
At the very beginning, yeah, so there's, so you start at.
Bottom
like,
left
Yeah,
kinda
it's- it's
stuff,
start-
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you start at step 5,
Yeah.
and then you have a few years to grow. So even the representatives from the paraprofessional group said that's going to be great for recruiting.
Good.
Because they know. So that was an adjustment. It's in that cost.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was a good thing that we brought forward, and they accepted as well.
And additionally, when we look to hire paraprofessionals, it is a strategy that we look for candidates who aren't recently certified as teachers. They maybe haven't landed a teaching position yet, but this gets them in the door in a school district with school experience, and we get the benefit of their background and training. So it has been beneficial for both parties.
Mr. Passios?
Yeah, just one more question on the steps. If my recollection is correct, the last two 3-year contracts that have been negotiated, this one that goes into effect on July 1, and the previous 3-year contract, not the interim 1 year, added 4 steps to the teachers' step program. Of the 8 districts that you used as comparisons, do you know what their average total number of steps were?
I don't have the average number of steps. My recollection is a few of the districts did go beyond the 12 steps. That's why on my numbers, I used step 10. So it wasn't it wasn't a maximum number. It wasn't the highest step. So I did that because I know that some probably had up to 15 steps, and some had probably a minimum of 10. So that was kind of the range, like between 10 and 15. We had 12. Now we're expanding it up to 13.
Okay.
So our contract with the teachers isn't going to stick out because we have 13 steps. We're right in line with some other districts and other contracts.
Any other questions?
It's just something that previous contract with the 3 added steps on the top, there was, I won't say controversy, but a lot of discussion about that after the fact.
Mr. Menard?
So earlier in the budget season, we talked about the math teachers, I think, in the early grades, and having trouble recruiting maybe strong teachers with math skills. Is there anything that you did in this contract to try to close that gap? Because amongst everything, I think that's the most critical gap this school district.
So there's no language in a contract, and it's not typically included in a contract relative to expertise in a particular area. The way we're addressing that, though, is with the ESSER funds, and we'll get back to that, bringing in people who have that licensed background so that they can work to oversee and recommend interventions for students who are struggling and falling behind in math, but they also will be able to provide expertise and examples to our teachers, so that our teachers are also getting the benefit of working with somebody that has this area of expertise, so that when these positions are eliminated because we can't fund them when the ESSER grants run out, our teachers have become stronger teachers in the classroom because they've worked with people who have some expertise in that area. Additionally, when districts want to address a problem like that, you can approach it a couple of different ways. Consultants often come in and do coaching with teachers in the classroom. So in addition to having a teacher position that's a special area, certification, math, we're also going to be looking to bring in some consultant to do some of the coaching in the classroom. We've been doing that for the last couple of years with literacy. We've partnered with a consultant who sets up a schedule and comes in and visits classrooms, gives feedback, models some things, and we'll take the same approach with the math. And we're also looking to pilot some new math curriculum in the hopes that we'll end up adopting a new curriculum for math. That, again, provides teachers the resource, it provides them the training from the publisher, how to approach instruction in the classroom. So there are multiple prongs coming to play here to strengthen our teaching in the classroom, particularly at the early grades. 6 through 12, people typically have a certification in a specific area, and that's the area that they teach. Whereas pre-K through 5, you're more of a generalist. You have to teach all subject areas. So we're looking to approach it from multiple angles so that 3 years out from now, our teachers will be in a better place with stronger instruction in math and in literacy.
Any other questions with respect to contracts? Okay. I do want to have a brief conversation about ESSER 2 because or ESSER 3. We'll talk about ESSER 2 and 3. There's a substantial amount of federal money coming in, and the school department is on the path of building a strategy to utilize those funds, and I would appreciate if you could just kind of give us a quick overview of what those numbers are and what you're doing there.
Sure.
Okay.
So we have the two. They're going to expire, about 6 months apart? No, a little bit longer than that. Both will expire in FY24, but at different dates in the calendar year. So we're looking at them strategically to use them in the best possible way we can.
So we're a pretty good team. Everything I forget, Dr. Brennan will bring up. Because I say that because there's a lot of moving parts, and I know I said that earlier, but truly this is, there's a lot of requirements for this grant. So this is an entitlement grant. An entitlement grant is not a competitive grant. So we don't have to apply with an application against other towns or other districts. This is an amount that comes straight to Lunenburg Public Schools. So that's an entitlement grant. And it's called ESSER 3. So you may hear that in the news, you may hear that in public meetings, but really it's the American Rescue Plan Act. And it was done by this presidential administration. And Lunenburg is getting $1.350,083. And that money can be spent over the next 3 fiscal years. So with that money, with that money comes great responsibility, right? I think that's a comic book thing. But there are a number of requirements that come with this. So ESSER 3 comes after ESSER 2, and there was actually ESSER 1, and we're implementing ESSER 1 right now in this fiscal year. We're funding a psychologist, a social worker, an assistant principal, and that money is going to go away and be spent by the end of this school year. We also have ESSER 2, and we haven't submitted that application yet because we want it to coincide with ESSER 3. So, and I'll get to what I'm after about that in a minute. So, ESSER 3, it's a 2-part process. So, it's really identifying what the back-to-school plan is. And in Lunenburg, we have a back-to-school plan. But we have to meet a number of requirements of posting it and letting everybody know and making sure that we comply with the CDC requirements. So there's every 6 months we have to revise it if we have to, depending on what the CDC requirements are. So it's tied to safety. What is your return to, back to school plan? So there's kind of an operational piece. And then there's an implementation piece. And that's really where the budget comes in. And that's where we have to spend our money in 3 areas. So it's academics, social, emotional, capital, operations, and capital. So those are 3 pretty big buckets. And what a lot of that money is tied to is evidence that it's helping students. The money is primarily, any money that we use has to address student learning loss or some emotional need. So anything that we propose out of this grant, we have to document those improvements. So we have to track the progress that these positions, these purchases are making on student learning loss over the 3 years of the grant. There's a minimum of 20% that goes to social emotional response. I can tell you that we're hiring social workers. We have already hired them. We've kind of gone through that process with the school committee. I'll get to that in a second. So we've already met that requirement. That was a good move by the school committee. By committing that, we're able to recruit social workers. We've got them hired for next school year. All the other districts in the state are looking for social workers. We've already hired, probably one of the hardest positions to fill, and we're ready to go for September 1st. It was a great move by the school committee to allow that to happen. So thank you. But once again, any money that we spend has to be on evidence-based practices. It's addressing academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of students. And we have to provide evidence-based practices, data to the state. We started having conversations today. That data is also going to be reviewed with any adjustments during the 3-year period. So maybe we're falling behind, and maybe we're excelling in one area. Maybe we do a shift of some funding during the 3 years, just so we can bring students up to where they need to be. So one of the big requirements, and I'm going to take this opportunity to speak to the public, is that we do have a survey on our website for parents, stakeholders, students, anyone who wants to participate in a survey on where this money wants to go. We would love your input. Once we get this information, we'll develop our implementation plan with positions. I have a feeling that the information that we get from our stakeholders will, in the requests, will exceed what we have in ESSER 3. And that's why we're holding on to ESSER 2. And we're going to use the money for ESSER 2. And I would imagine we've got money already set aside for some of the needs in our local budget in FY22 to address. I've already seen some of the data. So, some of the positions that we funded in our local budget will address some of the needs that have already been identified from the stakeholders. So, it's and then there's some grants too for our summer school.
Correct.
So those were competitive grants. So, as I explained to the school committee, our ESSER money is not going to meet our needs. ESSER 3. That's why we're going to tie into ESSER 2, local funds. It's going to be a comprehensive spending plan to address instructional loss for our students.
So the call to action, as we like to say in marketing, in last night's school committee meeting was not televised, I don't believe. Yeah, so this survey is out. It can be found, I believe, on the school department website and might be in your email box. The survey closes Sunday, and the school committee is acting on this on Monday of next week, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
So Monday will be, we have a preliminary budget and presentation ready to go. Once again, we're looking at data now.
Yeah, of course.
We've been monitoring as the responses are
Yep.
coming.
So it's really fine tuning and really making sure that those needs are being addressed.
And that school committee meeting is happening where and when?
Same place as last time.
Okay.
At the middle high school,
Okay.
6 o'clock.
So if you want to participate, be there or be square, as they say.
And really, I strongly encourage people to participate in that survey. That would be, that's one way to really participate.
One of the ongoing discussions that we've been having informally, I would say, I raised this to the school committee at the beginning of the 1920 school year, was the discussion about all of the fees associated with extracurricular activities, sports, class dues, you name it. And I had pledged to you at the beginning of that year that I was going to keep track. I actually do, because I share expenses with another parent, so I keep a pretty good ledger of that. But COVID-19 hit, and I decided to let you off the hook. But I'm still keeping track. So my reason for bringing that up is, I believe that there are enormous social and emotional benefits to extracurricular activities, sports, clubs, music, you name it, all of which come with fees, not all of which every family in Lunenburg can afford, particularly if you have multiple kids participating in multiple activities. I'm curious if there's any opportunity for relief, or perhaps just the opportunity to encourage greater participation as a potential path to improving the overall social and emotional wealth of our students.
So we have not discussed using grant funds to reduce fees. We have, however, discussed using the funds for some extracurricular activities. Again, we need to see what comes in through the survey. But that is one area that we had talked about because it addresses that social component that the kids have lost because they've been isolated. So we are looking to spend some monies in that way, but we have not discussed reducing fees that currently exist.
Can I just ask, you said the school committee is going to act on something on Monday. What are they acting on? What's the decision being made?
They essentially will get behind the priorities that are identified. So we will share with them results from the survey and our plan for how we would allocate the money to meet those needs. Additionally, we'll probably be identifying positions, and as long as they vote and endorse our priorities and our plan, we will then move forward with submitting. We do have to submit a grant proposal to the state. Yes, it's an entitlement. Yes, we're getting a certain amount of money, but we do have to submit the proposal. Proposals are not due until October, but as Mr. Cassidy had already indicated, by getting our plan together quickly, getting school committee approval to move on posting positions that will be grant funded, we're ahead of the curve in terms of recruiting people to fill those positions versus taking more time, waiting until fall. We're going to be behind the 8 ball at that point. So we have been very intentional in terms of anticipating. They've been telling us ESSER money was coming now for, 3 months, more than 3 months? So we've already been strategizing as to how we think we would need to use those funds to impact the social emotional elements as well as the academic. So we've been talking about this for months. So we're ready. We're ready to present a plan and a strategy as to how to best utilize the funds to support our kids. But we would like to get that approval and get that application in so that we can post positions and start hiring them so that we're ready to go.
The other moving piece here, though, is you're also having to balance this ESSER 2 application with the ESSER 3. The ESSER 2 is less stringent than the ESSER 3 in terms of the evidence-based stuff. So once you
Correct.
land on the strategy, then you can figure out what money goes to what and what
Correct.
you have to
And
document.
the ESSER 2 grant proposal window, we could have submitted already, but again, we've been pretty strategic in waiting to see the monies and the requirements from ESSER 3 to kind of build a comprehensive plan using both funding sources, in addition to our local budget.
So it seems very sporty to take data that you get on Sunday, synthesize it, analyze it, incorporate it, get it off to a school committee for them to analyze and think through, and then ask them for a decision on the same day.
As I said, the survey's been out since, last Friday, and we have the capacity to monitor the input that's coming in as it's coming in. So we're checking it daily. And I can tell you that what we've seen come in so far in the responses is very consistent with the plan we have been discussing for some time. Again, we can certainly make adjustments because there are many things that we had talked about as possibilities to address the social emotional piece and the academic piece. And as Mr. Cassidy said, it sounds like a really big number, but spread out over 3 years, it really goes quickly. So there were things that we had thought about that, if necessary, we could rapidly make that adjustment if that's what we're seeing through the survey, that families and students and other stakeholders are looking for something different. But so far, their responses have been very consistent with what we're thinking we would like to propose. But we absolutely will be able to make that adjustment and present it.
Any more questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time, especially after the last day of school, which was yesterday. I made a comment at last night's school committee meeting. You know, this has been one heck of a year. I think everybody could probably attest to the fact that it's been a crazy year. You guys have encountered one change after another every month or two, it seemed like. And I know, being close to a number of teachers in town, that it's been an extraordinary effort on their parts, and there's no way that we could, I think, ever thank them or pay them back adequately. But in addition to that, our administration and professional staff, everybody has really put in an inordinate amount of work to make sure that this year has been successful. We've got a lot of catch-up work to do, I know that, but I think we're in as good a position as we could possibly be in at this point. And I thank you both and your administrative staff for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. Okay, next on the agenda is Finance Committee procedures discussion. So the procedures document, which is on our OneDrive, I have not personally paid much attention to it since Chris first proposed it, probably a month or so ago. And what I would suggest is, given where we're at on the calendar, we have 2 new appointees that we're going to seat on the 8th of July for their first meeting. I would propose that we pass on this agenda item and revisit this when we have, effectively the new board who will have to carry out these procedures that we agreed to, seated in July. Is that
I agree.
okay with
Well,
everybody?
unless, the departing members have a,
No, that's okay. It's all right.
You're always welcome, Heather, to come and comment and tell
Yeah,
us what
it's
you
all right.
think.
No, no, you guys can decide on your procedure.
Okay. With that, I will move on to the next item, which is minutes. So I did spend some time in the OneDrive last night, much overdue, and there were 4 sets of minutes waiting for me there. And in reviewing the minutes, I came to the realization that a meeting that I had missed back in April, we were all assigned catch-up duty on minutes, which I think for the most part we have either been unaware of or have ignored. So based on my accounting right now, we still need minutes for the 25th of February, the 11th of March, the 18th of March, the 25th of March, and the 8th of April. And as it turns out, we've all been assigned. Jay, you've submitted the 4th, so we've got that. That's in
not
here.
done.
Wait, which one did you submit?
The 4th.
No, I didn't submit that.
You didn't? Okay. I don't know why I checked it then.
Well, yeah, it might be in the OneDrive, but it's
Oh, you
not
put it
there.
in, but it's not done?
Oh, yeah, somehow I ended up in there. I think I saved it.
Oh,
when
okay.
I was
All right,
working on
so
it.
we'll punt on that then. So what I would propose is, I think we should, if we can, vote to approve the minutes that are done and ready tonight. And then I would propose that we do meet as scheduled next week, give ourselves a deadline to get the minutes done as assigned, and meet next week with uno item on the agenda, which is approval of minutes. And then we can all coincidentally meet for a drink at the Asian or something and call it a night.
All right.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
All right.
We gotta get it done.
Okay. So looking,
Most of mine.
no, Heather, you've been, and your minutes are excellent, and I appreciate your hard work. So much so that we funded somebody to help us do this next year. So,
Oh, I know. It's so unfair.
You should apply for that.
so,
I should apply
hey, you should apply for the job. That's a great
for
idea.
that job.
That is a great idea. Good call. So, with that, I have minutes for February 18th that I believe are complete and ready for approval. Would anybody care to make a motion or comment on those minutes?
I move we approve the minutes of February 18th.
Second?
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? We don't have to call a roll.
Oh, that's so nice.
Aye.
Aye.
All
Oh
opposed?
my God, it's so weird.
We are unanimous. February 18th minutes are approved. Minutes for April 29th.
Look at that big jump.
I had, and I did not make the change online.
It's a change.
I have one recommended change on those minutes under reports. This was mine.
Okay.
The last line I'd just like to omit, which was the money earmarked will go toward other capital projects. That earmarked money actually went to the
Oh, it's
fire alarm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So they backfilled
Okay.
the unspent, or the,
I wasn't watching the video.
yeah, okay. I get, no. But if we can just omit that line.
The last line. in
The
your
last
report.
line under my report for school committee. Yep.
Yep.
Any discussion or motions with respect to minutes for April 29th?
I move we approved with that change.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. I am not going in order. April 22nd. So I would call your attention to these minutes because these are the minutes that have the assignments that we have not completed. So if you want to know what your assignment is, go to the minutes for April 29th.
I move we reject those minutes.
Jay, you were there too.
All right. I would entertain any discussion or motions with respect to the minutes for April 22nd, excuse me.
Rejecting them.
I move that we approve those minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Jay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 An aye for myself. We are unanimous. And we are going to table March 4th,
Okay, because that wasn't actually,
because
okay,
that wasn't actually done, although
okay. Although we thought it was.
I thought it was.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make that correction, then send them over to the town. Okay?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, now with that, I have lost my agenda. So bear with me while I sift through the
Now you know
papers.
how Terry feels.
I am starting to feel her pain.
She's always like, where'd that agenda go? Online, right?
Here we go. All right. Committee reports. School committee met last night. You just heard all of the substantive conversation from that meeting. They did approve a new course for the history department at the high school. They will now be teaching an introduction to law class as part of their high school social studies course offerings. It was a very impressive presentation by Mr. Stevenson, and I would encourage you to watch it if it ever gets posted to
Is
YouTube.
it a half a year class? Or is it a whole year?
It's a half credit.
It's one of those half,
Yep,
okay.
yep. Any other committee reports? Mr. Passios?
TC Passio's Building Design Committee met last evening. Basically, the meeting was to review the scope of work for the contract going forward for the new charge that was voted at town meeting. That was the bulk of the conversation. We did go a little further into some of the deliberations that we will probably have early on once the contract is signed, which we hope will be finalized and signed off on in early July. And then we'll be looking for questions from the architects so that we can backfill information that they need to hopefully have a proposal with them, from them within 60 days of the execution of the contract. There was a bit of discussion too about scheduling and timeframes. At present, we are going to do our darndest to shoot for November special town meeting. With, excuse me, with, I think it's going to end up being two separate articles with two separate proposals. The one we just finished developing and the one that will be developed by this secondary look. As to whether or not there'll be funding articles, that's a little bit up in the air, but there's a very good chance that if we submit two proposal articles, the corresponding funding articles will also be there.
Okay. Any other committee reports or discussion relative to committees? Hearing none. Town Manager, Finance Director report. Mrs. Lemieux, are you still with us?
I am. So where do I start? I'll I'll start with we have a number of bids that we have been receiving for different projects, capital projects, to give updates on. We had a library carpet project. So we received both. That was split into two bids, one for specialized moving services for all the books and equipment and all the associated materials, and as well as the carpet installation itself. The total cost for both bids came in at approximately $68,600. So there, in that capital article was the total that was $126,000. So we will have, pending any possible change orders, which aren't anticipated, we'll have an excess in that capital article for future reappropriation. We received bids for the ADA work for the parking lot at North Cemetery on June 9th, and that project came in. We had received one bidder, Powell, was awarded that contract. They've already begun the project, so they should be done by the end of the fiscal year, and that came in right around what we had available for funding. So it was approximately 53,000 that the bid came in at, and we had a total between the capital article of 20,000 and the ADA grant for 32,000. So that is moving forward. We have we solicited bids for the pay-as-you-throw manufacturer and retail distribution service. We received one bid from our current vendor for a 1 year. That's they only offered a 1 year contract at this time. They'd revisit going forward. And there would be an increase in that cost, which will be factored into the overall total cost of the pay-as-you-throw program. To touch on that, I gave an update on the 8th as well as Tuesday's select board's meeting. Something brought up by Selectman Jeffries on June 8th about looking into how we could offer discounted pay-as-you-throw bags for senior citizens. I made some inquiries as well as Selectman Jeffries did to a vendor. The recommendation that I would have if we're going to move forward with that is to purchase some cases of bags that we could offer senior citizens through the senior center, and they would be free, so there'd be no transaction of revenue at the senior center, and it would be a limited supply. The pay-as-you-throw bags themselves through that could be purchased through our recycling dividends program funds. Is everyone hearing me?
Yes.
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 Okay. Lost the picture. So that will ultimately factor into the overall cost as well. The finance director and I have been working on the projected cost. We got updated numbers for the total bags sold in the last year, which exceeded our estimates for the year. So we actually received a surplus of revenue. We're expecting to close out between 40 and 50,000 in the solid waste enterprise account. And that is really due to our collection rate is a flat rate. So the more cases we sell, there's a margin of profit there. We don't plan on, we try to budget as close to possible as making it self-sufficient and without having a large surplus. So that is going to be taken into account as well when we look at this potential program of offering senior citizens free bags. We could use that revenue towards that total cost in FY22 of what it would cost to collect and dispose of those bags. So I will have an update for the select board on Tuesday, the 22nd on that. The Ritter Kitchen project, that was a capital article. I met with Monty Tech a couple weeks ago, and they will be able to do that project in the fall. So that's going to save the town money. We wouldn't have to pay prevailing wages for that. It would just be the cost of materials. So, and as everyone I'm sure is aware, there's been a lot of inflation around building materials. So hopefully by the fall, those come down. But right now, even with what we need for that project, the instructor at Monty Tech, we're within our budget to purchase those materials. Another project that we gone out to bid for is, the public safety carport project is currently out to bid. We received filed sub bids this past Tuesday, And that low bidder was Rockwell Roofing of Leominster for $23,750. That total project, we have a capital article in the amount of $135,000. We receive our general contract bids this coming Tuesday, the 22nd. So depending on those bid numbers, we'll know if we're going to be within that budget. The engineer architect that did that project estimating, he did advise us that when we were going out to bid, due to the rising cost of inflation, that the original estimate would be exceeded by what he was currently seeing for bids coming in. So we, in anticipating that, we have earmarked funds in the facilities budget for the purpose if we do exceed the capital article for that project.
Heather, are those FY21 funds or 22 funds?
That was a oh, you mean the funds themselves?
Yeah.
FY21, they would be.
So you're going to encumber FY21 funds to supplement?
Yes.
Okay.
If we need to. So we'll see on Tuesday how those bids in. So cross our fingers that, it seems like costs are coming down right now. The not good news on this end either, as Flat Hill Culvert. An update on that. Our engineer provided an updated construction cost estimate for that project the other day to us, and that they're estimating that construction cost to be $750,000 right now. And I just received something late today from her because both the DPW director and I had a lot of additional questions on where those extra costs were coming into play. We had just confirmed the original estimate in December when we were going through the capital planning process, and they said that was still an accurate number. So there's a lot of questions there that need answering on why that escalated so much.
What was the budget on that?
428,500.
That's a big delta.
Yes. We originally, as we had relayed during the process, our plan was to go out to bid right away, and so we could hit the ground running in fiscal 22 with that project, especially due to the nature of the project and how the public safety priority it has. But after speaking with the engineer, we're going to go ahead and submit an application to the Small Bridge Program Fund, which still has not been announced when that's going to, applications are going to be open to be received. But we are all set to go with our application to be submitted in the hopes that we can receive funding and that would supplement any necessary costs for that project. It is a prime project for that program. We think it would be very well received. So I've been in touch with our legislators too as well about the need for that project, and just to keep us updated on when that project, those funds through Mass DOT would become available. In other updates, outside of bid projects, we are also recipients of American Rescue Plan Act funds, and so those funds included $3.4 billion in funding through this fund for Massachusetts municipalities, and they're dispersed in 2 rounds, with 50% becoming available as of June 1st, and the remaining 50% becomes available not less than 12 months after the town receives their first disbursement. So the finance director requested a disbursement the other day for our first 50%, and from all information that we're received through webinars that both of us have attended, various ones. It's a lot of information on this funding. Is we should see that funding very shortly.
Heather, what's the total number on that for Lunenburg?
So our 50% is 614,000 approximately. So it's over 1.2 million.
And what is the
The eligible
procedure that you
uses?
anticipate in terms of what we do with that?
So I'll give the broad categories. There's a lot more research to do on each category and what it can be spent on. But the broad categories are public health spending, economic impacts of the public health emergency, lost public sector revenue, premium pay for essential workers, and water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So lost revenue, public sector revenue, we do not believe at this point. We didn't see any lost revenue, and this was compared to FY19 revenue figures. So we are gonna put together a plan for the use of these funds, and I think they'll focus on addressing important infrastructure needs and ones that would have a meaningful impact to the community at large. But things that they cannot be used on is to replenish rainy day funds or reserve funds or make deposits into the pension fund. So there's work to do on that as far as putting a plan together on the use of those funds.
Heather, what is the current policy or procedure in terms of appropriating those funds from the town? Is that directed by you or the Board of Selectmen, or do those appropriations have to go through town meeting?
They do not have to go through town meeting.
So these are executive decisions?
Yes.
Okay.
We would take the approach, though, that we would get consensus on the best use and those funds.
Okay.
Do you foresee that including a review by the Finance Committee?
Any input is welcome.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that on a July agenda, I would imagine.
I knew that's what you were pointing towards, so I just came right out and said it.
Okay. Anything else, Heather?
I can't think of anything else.
Do you want to talk about Summer Street?
Yes. Both Mr. Beardmore and actually came up at one of the selectmen brought it up as well, asking what's going on Summer Street and the sidewalks. So I spoke with the DPW director today. He was notified yesterday from Mass DOT that there was spalling of some of the concrete in the sidewalks. So the state has mandated that the contractor remove all those panels, that there's clear and evident spalling, that they replace those, and that will not affect the town at all. There will be no funding that's needed in the town.
So that's the good news. I think the bad news here is the continuing theme of challenging communications between the town and the state when it comes to road projects.
Agreed.
That side of town has been pretty interesting the last few weeks. And, I don't, this is obviously an administrative and an executive issue, not a finance committee issue, but as a resident, I got to tell you, it hasn't been fun the last few weeks living down in that end of town. So,
Yeah, I was notified last week by the DPW director about the issue with the traffic signal, that they had it on a very short cycle. So I believe that's been fixed.
I mean, but it gets metastasized when somebody, drives in, plows into another set of traffic lights at the intersection of 2A and 13, which you can't anticipate, but there's absolutely no slack in the system when the entire end of town is under construction. So that's what we had to survive last weekend. So, any event. Any other items, Mrs. Lemieux, or questions from the board?
I have a question on the pay-as-you-throw program,
Yes.
the one-year contract. What's the total cost increase for people purchasing pay-as-you-throw bags?
They don't know yet.
But that is still being worked out as far as the figures that,
Okay, because I had heard
well,
it was,
the,
it's not 40%.
it would be between 30 and 40%. That was the projection.
Okay. Okay.
Part of that was driven by the contract for the waste removal going up. Heather, was it 39%?
It was greater than that, I believe. I think it was.
Yeah, it was a bigger number
We
than
only have a
that.
one-year contract.
What date would
That's
that
the
go into
bags,
effect?
not the removal.
Okay.
The contract that she just announced is
They're just the bags.
the bags themselves.
The bags, right.
What date would that new rate go into effect?
Once a decision is made, we'll notify the bag vendor, and it would be about 30 days thereafter.
So everybody stockpile
Exactly. Go buy bags.
right now. I'm not kidding. It's not like 40% is crazy.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Lemieux?
No.
Thank you very much for your flexibility with tonight's meeting. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment? Is there anybody on the Zoom who cares to comment?
I don't even know if there's anybody.
No,
It's okay.
there's no one on the Zoom that has their hand raised.
Beautiful night in June. Nobody's watching the Finance Committee. Okay.
There's one chat.
Yeah, what is that chat message?
Yeah, it's been there the whole meeting, so I can only assume Heather's got it under control. Okay, any public comment from the board?
I don't know if it's truly a public comment, but I just would like to make the board aware, or the committee, that I sent a message yesterday or today, I don't remember now for sure, asking what the next steps were going to be to move forward with the ratification of the capital planning policy change that we supported and capital planning also supported, because as far as I know, it hasn't moved past our support. So one of the things I thought of is that I think it'd be appropriate for a communication from the Finance Committee in writing stating that we did discuss it and supported the increase in the dollar amount, so that when it goes to the Board of Selectmen, all those eggs are in a row already, instead of being put off
Okay.
for a meeting or two.
I will discuss that with Terry and take necessary action.
Yep, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, so right now, the game plan is next meeting will be 6:24, which is a regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting, same bat time, same bat channel. And then subsequent meeting after that will be July 8th. I anticipate that next week's meeting will be quite short. The subsequent meeting on July 8th, we will reorganize and revisit the policies and procedures and other stuff we've been talking about. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Meeting is adjourned at 8:34 PM. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Heather.
Who's doing these meeting minutes?
Good night, everyone.
I'm doing the rest of the meeting minutes. You guys only have your assignments. I have all the new ones.
Thank you.
Okay.
We